Welcome to The Road Less Traveled with Tiffany Rosenbaum. This podcast is about sharing the success and failure of entrepreneurs. Join in and learn from others' mistakes so you don't have to go through the same hardships in business. Now let's welcome your host, business coach, real estate investor, and proud wife and mom, Tiffany Rosenbaum.
Welcome to another podcast of The Road Less Traveled. We are going behind the scenes. Summer Rae is interviewing me to go real and raw. So let's see what she has.
Okay, so today what we want to talk about is I want you to share a specific story from your entrepreneurial journey where saying yes to too many opportunities ended up causing missed deadlines or issues by saying yes too much.
That's a really good question. I think that's actually one of the biggest issues for entrepreneurs because we usually feel we can do more than what is realistic. So I would say, I had a friend that came to me, individual, and wanted to partner up in a business. And it was a great business opportunity. It was a great idea. And we started, and really quickly when I got into it, I realized I had this gut-wrenching feeling that this was a yes I probably shouldn't have done. So I'd sat down and I said, hey, I'll do whatever I got to do to make it right. But at this time, this is not right. And it was actually, this individual was feeling the exact same thing. Because we had a third partner, and it just something wasn't right. And as I realized, what's interesting about this question, I actually had another business idea and another business opportunity just over the weekend, just now. And I called one of my mentors and one of my advisory board members, and we talked through it for about 2 hours. And I said, but this is what I want to do. And he said, okay, think about it. Think about the business you're in and think about what's going on. I said, so the question needs to be, where do I have to get to be able to do this other thing? And so, but many times, so often entrepreneurs go, just take on another thing. Because that's what we see in social media. Just a million things, right? But what people don't see is behind the scenes, the team, the grind. They don't see that a lot of times. And so I've realized I have to say no first. And then yes will come, but it takes time. And you got to have this strategic eyesight to be able to see that it's not always yes. Usually no is more.
Right. Yep. Okay. So how has overcommitting affected, in the past, and wanting to overcommit, how has that affected your ability to stay focused and deliver your best results?
Actually, this last year, I'd say I focused more than ever. A lot of hours no one saw, except for maybe everyone's on social media. But it was a lot of 1, 2 a.m. mornings to really strategically be able to plan and not to overcommit to other things. So I hyper-focused. And, even other ventures that was brought to my table, no, can't. And it was so hard to say no because I'm one that really loves to push. But because we hyper-focused, we were able to grow 120%. And but there's been many times. Even 2 years ago, I had a buddy come to me and say, hey, let's partner up in an HVAC. Great guy. Amazing guy. And we even went through all the process. And then I realized I stepped out. And I was like, it's not the right fit. Because if I put my mind here, I'm not going to put it here. And so we had to go back to the big vision. What's the big vision? And so many times I think entrepreneurs think the little bitty business on the side is part of the vision. In reality, it's not. And so that's probably been one of the hardest things for me to learn. But hyper-focusing is actually where the success comes from, instead of branching out into a million different things. So it's been a learning process.
So then what would you say, what's the framework or the set of questions that you ask yourself before you say yes to a new opportunity so that you don't focus on the wrong thing?
Oh, that's a good question. The number one question I ask now, and we just did this, my husband and I, because we're partners, we just did this at dinner on Saturday night. What is the ultimate goal? what is the ultimate dream? Where are we supposed to go? Because so often, even Daniel and me, we'll put our eyes will start wavering. And so we have to go at what's the ultimate goal? Where's the vision? Where are we supposed to be headed? And that ultimate thing, and that can go into day-to-day activities, that can go into businesses. Like the ultimate goal, the vision, every single little bitty thing we do has to get us there. And so often we can sidestep and go, well, but this gets me something now, right? And so often entrepreneurs are like, check off the box, I finished something now. But in reality, when you become a CEO and a true entrepreneur and a leader, it's really hard. And it's one of the biggest struggles I've had is you have to look at the vision, the org chart, like on a daily basis and envision, what does it have to be in a year? What does it have to be in 2 years to get to the vision? And so often you got to ask that question, what's the ultimate goal?
So what would you say is how would you tell other entrepreneurs what's a polite way to say no? How do you say no and how do you turn those down?
In reality, entrepreneurs need to realize it's not about being nice. And I was listening to Dan Martell this weekend. And it opened my eyes a lot because so often entrepreneurs want to be liked because that's why they go into entrepreneurship a lot of times. But they have to realize being nice does not mean you're going to be liked. And so often you have to make really hard decisions that suck. And when you have to say no to someone, in reality, you're saving them from a lot of heartache too. Because if you split yourself so many ways, there's only a percentage of you to go around. And so when you hyper-focus, your whole mentality is going to this one thing, and you can get so much further. But when you split, you're actually hurting that person and everybody around you.
So what would you say, how do you keep those relationships so that when the time is right to grow and expand and you've reached your goals, what do you do so you don't burn that bridge when you say no?
I think honesty, right? Like, and that's a hard one, but it's honesty saying, look, right now is not the right time. Like if I say yes to you, in reality, I'm going to hurt you because I have this going on. And where's my focus going to be? What's my number one focus? And I take back to a story that when my husband wanted to start up a business, I had him sit down with his business partner. I said, you got to ask him what his number one focus is. And I didn't realize this was the most important thing to figure out because you got to figure out what your number one focus is. Because that's where your mind, body, soul is all going to go to. And so when he sat down and he started talking to his buddy they were going to partner with, what happens if you start dropping in school grades because he was still in college? He said, well, everything's going to go to our school. And every question he started asking, he realized not one of the answers was the business. And realized, okay, that's not a good partnership. And so often when we get asked the question, or hey, I want to partner up with you, the answer needs to be truth, honesty, and go, look, I only have 25% to give, or I only have 15% to give, because there's only so much time in the day, and where's your focus going to go? And so often we just need to be 100% transparent, and not just honest, but 100% transparent. And just say, hey, this is what we can do. But what if, in a year or 2 years? Because last year, I can tell you I had over 5 opportunities on my table. And so often, I had to just be like, okay, what's truth? What's transparent? And I had to sit down. And the conversations weren't always pleasant, but they had to happen. They had to happen. And at the end of the day, I think you become stronger when you have those hard conversations, no matter how bad they suck.
Okay. And then what advice would you give to an entrepreneur who's currently stuck in the habit of overcommitting and saying yes because they don't want to miss out on any opportunity?
I think you need to step back. And if you're an entrepreneur that's overcommitting and saying yes to everything, because you see that on social media, just say yes. BS. You need to step back. And you need to go, what's your ultimate dream? What's your ultimate goal? Where are you supposed to be? What's the vision, right? And everything should align to the vision. And so if you have a vision for your business or whatever you're in right now, and if some other opportunity comes and that opportunity doesn't get you closer to that vision, you have to step back and say, hey, right now, it's not that. And so speak truth. And I think the most important thing is be truthful with yourself. because so often entrepreneurs will say they can do more than they can. Don't get me wrong, I'm the number one that will do that. But really be honest with yourself. How much time are you going to put into it? Because it's going to be grind. And when it starts going down, what are you going to do? Are you going to get up at 1 or 2 a.m. or are you going to just let it sink? Because when you go into a partnership, that's even more. You got to be able to have the person's back. And so you got to speak truth to them as well.
So if you were to talk to an entrepreneur who was feeling this, who was overcommitting, and they're like, okay, I've got to step back, what is the top 2 things you would advise them to focus on? Instead of trying to figure out what not to do, what are the 2 things you'd be like, okay, focus on these 2 things first, and that's going to help give you clarity if they don't know what their number one is?
I think that's the number one question. 9 times out of 10, entrepreneurs have a blindfold on and going through a maze just trying to figure it out. Sit in your thoughts and literally go, what's your vision? Because if you can't envision it, how are you supposed to allow other people to envision your vision? And I think it's really hard because entrepreneurs get into the weeds and they get into the day-to-day and they're like, oh, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Instead of sitting back and really planning. I would say most entrepreneurs actually are not great at planning. They're really good at doing. And so even this weekend when I was on the phone with one of my mentors and advisors, he said, because of where your vision is, you are going to have to really start planning even more so. I was like, oh, crap. And he said, the time you spend now, you better double or triple it because the vision's big. And if you can't envision it and you can't map it out, how's your team supposed to map it out? And it was a reality check because so often it's really easy to get stuck behind emails. It's really easy to get on a phone call that, wasted your time. And I was watching Elon Musk. I'm really big into Elon Musk and a few other people, Mark Cuban. And they said, the number one thing is they don't allow people to steal their time. And I know that sounds, it's not supposed to sound cocky, but people need to realize their time is the most important thing. And so I'm trying to get better at that. I think it's something that on a daily basis, I got to get in check with because it's so easy to come in and go, let me get on my emails. So sometimes I have to step back and go, nope, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing.
Fantastic. So if you could go back and give your earlier self one piece of advice about saying yes versus no in business, what would it be?
I would have said hyper-focus, Tiff. Hyper-focus. So often you see people be doing 10, 20 things. But in reality, how successful are those 10 to 20 things? The people that are ultra successful and the people that elevate their teams, they hyper-focus. And as I've put together an advisory board and I sit with them, and it's interesting to watch what they say. And sometimes it's brutally honest. Sometimes it hurts. But at the end of the day, it's like if I take that and I really learn from them and I really hyper-focus, then we can all elevate together. But I think hyper-focus, stop saying yes to everything because you got enough to do in your one position that you're trying to build.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. And hopefully everybody got something out of this. If you wanted them to get something out of this, what would it be from this episode?
Stop splitting yourself too thin. Hyper-focus. That doesn't mean don't work extra hours. It means stop splitting where your mind has to go in 50 million different directions. Hyper-focus. And at the end of the day, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We're all learning together, and let's learn and grow together. So I appreciate it. Thanks. And watch the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in today to The Road Less Traveled. If you're organizing an event, workshop, or simply planning something exciting and would like to have Tiffany Rosenbaum join you or want to have her on your podcast, visit TiffanyMRosenbaum.com and click on Book Tiffany to get started.